sort of. You missed a lot of, anyway. So back to the editorial content in magazines. So again, you've got the editorial staff hiring editorial. It stays completely separate from the advertising group. In the advertising group, the thing about advertising in a magazine is that it doesn't. There's sales reps that will actually go out and hustle and try to get advertising. But the truth of it is, let's say I'm going to just give you an example. Let's say I'm Armani and I want to advertise in Vogue. I cannot, as Armani, I cannot approach Vogue directly and say I want to buy space in your magazine. I need to go through an ad agency. That's how it's always done. So I would approach DBD Needham or J. Walter Thompson, or I would go to some major ad agency and say I want to buy space in Vogue, and they act as the broker for me to go to Vogue and buy space. So they would go to Vogue and they would say, Armani wants to buy 6 pages in your September issue. And Vogue would say, Vogue then gets to make the choice, the decision. Are we going to accept Armani's advertising or not? And they have that right. And there's stuff that gets turned down. They'll say, nope, not interested in that. That is not who we want in our magazine. It is not our brand. They have the right to refuse that. But what they don't have the right to do is they don't have the right to tell either the ad agency or Armani how to shoot their pictures, what they're going to shoot. They have no control over that. So you have editorial in this camp, you've got advertising in that camp, and the two never really talk to each other. They're not supposed to talk to each other. They are completely separate. So Armani and the ad agency determines the content of their images, how they're shot. Again, we're going to take this to Morocco now, and we're going to do whatever it is. That's all decided between Armani's creative people and the ad agency that's actually buying the space for them. And in terms of the fee structure, what ends up happening is that, and you'll get into buying space into this, so we're going to look at how much, you're already in buying space for your advertising thing right now. So what ends up happening is that I'm Armani and I approach the ad agency, J. Walter Thompson. Please come back. Okay, totally lost my train of thought. Okay, right, so how the ad agency makes money and how they, and so let's say that Armani approaches J. Walter Thompson, J. Walter Thompson approaches Vogue, Vogue says, yep, you can have the 6 pages, $200,000 a page. So 6 of them is $1,200,000. What ends up happening is that then they'll say, okay, fine, we'll take your money, $1,200,000. So Armani pays the ad agency the $1,200,000. Then Vogue gives a discount to the ad agency of 15%, and that's the ad agency's take on it. So it's always quoted without the discount. When you look at, we can't get to the SRDS, but if you can, but I don't want you guys buying a subscription to the SRDS. But if we take a look at the SRDS, oh, this is advertising, sorry. Say what? I still can't hear you. I'm sorry. It's really hard to find them now. It used to be that it was really easy. I mean, it used to be that they actually published a physical version of it, and you just went to the library. That's how it always was for this class. And then they decided that they were losing too much money doing it that way, so they eliminated the print version of the book, and it's now online only, and the only way you can get access to it is subscription.
Didn't you say the subscription was like $1,000?
It's like $1,000 a year. Which, again, if you're an ad agency, that's not a problem, but for you guys, that's a huge problem. So, hang on one second. Yeah, like that, right? Where?
The internet, when you just find anything that you weren't supposed to be able to find.
Well, you can find a lot of it, though. So, again, the things that I sent to you guys or that I gave to you guys, we'll go to our website really quickly. It's just easier to find it there. I just went online because they can publish their own. So Vogue now publishes its own version of what it costs to do a page. So if we do us, So, do any of you guys use Firefox?
No.
Yes or no? You do. So right now, some of the colleges actually changed something that basically freezes Firefox right now, and you actually have to reset it.
Wait, how do we use Firefox?
So you do Chrome? Yeah, you do Chrome. You know all the shit that people are all like flipped out about TikTok because somebody's going to be stealing all of your data.
Oh yeah, I know. Google. Oh, that's
Google
fine.
knows everything
Oh, yeah.
about you.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Google raised me, so I can't be upset that my dad knows who I am. Like, he's taught me everything.
The other thing about Chrome is that it's this massive resource hog. You turn it on, your Photoshop will actually double its time to do anything.
For real?
Yep.
That makes sense.
Damn, because I be having 3 windows open with like 20 tabs. That makes so much sense. Well, no, I have a good RAM, so. But still, it's like.
So anyway, if you just do the thing I did, it'll reset Firefox, and Firefox will scream. Right? Will scream again.
I was been told very early on never use Firefox, and I've never used like Firefox.
I used it for a long time, and then I changed to Chrome, and then the resource thing started happening in Chrome, as well as everybody warning you that there's nothing that you can do that Google doesn't know about you, whatever. And so I went back to Firefox. But I pay the price by having to do this every single time I do it here at school. This doesn't happen in my house. Yeah. No, that part's fine. It's just that Firefox doesn't want to load, and you have to reset it.
Do we get a free VPN subscription
You do.
with okay.
Yes, you do.
What?
So it's called Global Protect. It's this thing right here.
I had VPN.
Send me an email, and I'll send you how to load it and how to get it and how to use it.
Can you just send it to everybody?
Yeah, but somebody sent me an email telling me to do that. So anyway, under resources right here, I think I have a version of an old SRDS page. So again, there's a lot of, there's media kits in here, but I think I've still got, this is a, I don't think this is their, I think, this is the one that they publish. That's not the SRDS one. On the fashion. Oh, perfect. Here's one. That's ESPN magazine. Hopefully I got Vogue in here. That's still ESPN magazine. Oh, here. So this is from 2011 SRDS page. So again, the way the SRDS worked is that they give you the whole blurb about who everybody is. Again, this is from 2011, so this goes back. But see this commission and cash discount right here? 15% to recognized agencies. So this is exactly how the J. Walter Thompson would know how much money they were making by placing the ads for Armani in Vogue magazine. So again, they would charge Armani $1,200,000, and then Vogue charges them that $1,200,000 minus 15%, and that's the 15% becomes the commission that the ad agency makes on that. Make sense? Okay. So again, And what you guys are doing right now for your advertising projects, you need to think about who you're going to advertise in. Those magazines that you're advertising in only have the right to refuse your advertising or accept it. They don't have any right. They cannot come to you and say, okay, well, we like this, but we really need to tone it down, or no, you can't do this in black and white, or no, you can't use this model in this, or no, it can't be that, or they don't have the right to say any of that stuff. They just have the right to say, yep, we'll take your magazine, we'll take your ads and your money, or we won't. So the editorial part, on the flip side, again, has no say at all in what the advertisers do. So they don't get to say, well, okay, Armani, if you want to do your advertising with us, you need to actually hire our photographer. But it doesn't work like that. These things are completely separate from one another. I'm sorry? Typically, you would show them the ads, and you'll say, "This is what I want to buy." And nobody really turns stuff down until you get stuff that becomes too provocative. So, did you notice the provocative ads that I haven't showed anybody yet?
No.
I know. I knew you would. I knew you would like perk up the minute I said that. No, but let's look at that. So. I just saw it a second ago. Oh, wait, these are...
Who's your favorite photographer?
I would say if I had to only pick one person right now... Hang on, hold that thought. I would probably say Javier Ballenrat. But he's been that for me for a long time.
How do you spell that?
Javier Ballenrat, VALL. This is close. ENRAT.
Oh, got it. Okay, yes.
So this became a challenge. There were people who turned this down, who refused to actually run these ads. So this was a series, this is actually over the course of quite some time, of Calvin Klein stuff. So thanks.
Commercial.
Yeah. I don't know if you know this stuff. This goes back through kind of the history part of it. The ones that got even more provocative was this group right in here. I thought they were really beautifully done, but there were people who took real exception to this and said, no, this is not for Vogue, even though it was Calvin Klein, that kind of stuff. So there was again, he's always sort of like pushed this boundary. So this would sort of like, in some of it, this is the oldest one that really created this whole like buzz about Calvin Klein being too out there, and there were people who refused to run this. There was a whole group of ads, and it was sort of like loosely based on Kid in the Basement, slightly pornographic, blah 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 blah. Oh yeah, this is old. Like this one right here is from I'm going to say probably mid to late 80s. So, but he's continued to do this. This is actually from 2007, 8, somewhere in there. So this isn't, as old, but yeah. So at any rate, are there any questions about that part, about the editorial content and about the split between the two of those? So again, right now you guys are doing your advertising work. So again, you're doing it for a specific magazine to basically tap into the brand that they've established, but they have no say in what you do. Now you're going to editorial, and in your editorial piece, whatever, the advertisers don't say what you do, but now you really need to be very focused on the brand itself, right? So you can't be doing, and it's interesting because there's an interplay in some of this, like some of the content that you would have for French Vogue, they will not run an American Vogue. Nudity becomes really the big issue. Not the only one, but that becomes a really, a German Vogue, even more so. Make sense? All right. So All right, that gets us through that part right here. I do want to go over the editorial checklist because this is going to be what you guys get to do, have to do. And the editorial content, the talk about all that kind of stuff is in, it's all on our website. Matter of fact, it's. That's entirely up to you. I mean, it's usually the way, again, this is not how it would actually happen. Usually what happens is a magazine hires you to shoot editorial for them, and they tell you what they want you to do. So you as a photographer are a hired gun. So in the case of like somebody as famous as Stephen Meisel, they're hiring him, and then they're just saying, we're hiring you because of you, and you get to do whatever you want. But he's got to then make the call about what he's going to shoot for his editorial content for any given magazine. But the thing that's driving all of that is the magazine. The brand of the magazine is trumps everything.
So I'm just wondering how you're going to get a chance. Is it like you're going to give us a magazine?
No, I am not. This is entirely up to you, what you want to do. Again, we're giving you as much freedom as we possibly can in this for you to hang yourself. No, that didn't. That was a joke. That was a joke. That was a joke.
Oh, aren't you recording yourself?
I am recording this. So if you look under the resources right here, oh, actually it's going to go back. So I've flipped the editorial side to a week later, and I will so this is where we're at right now. And so again, I haven't added this. I had to rebuild this. This kind of the email or the announcement that I sent to you guys yesterday. Initially, your concept boards for editorial were due today, and it's like, that can't happen. All of this is Christy's fault. No, I'm just kidding. No, she had to flip a class, and it made that I had to rewrite all of this, and I've moved everything around that I thought I needed to get moved around. But I haven't put the resources from session 8 into session 9. I will get this done before the end of the day, but like for wanting to look at the editorial content, it's not here either. It's got to go back to 7.
Yeah, Christy really fucked up your whole schedule.
No, she fucked up mine.
That's
Okay,
what I
yeah,
said.
so this stuff is going to be moved down to week number 9. So that's basically what we're talking about here. Because there's some past versions of editorial that I want to show you guys. So we're going to look through this part right here, but realize that after this class, all of this is going to be found in session 9, not in session 7. But if we look at the project assignment for this part right off the bat, I just want to go over this really quickly. Again, this is the final that we're doing here. So the thing that you should know about the editorial project is that the teams that we've got right now here, that 2 of our teams are groups of 3, 2 of our teams are groups of 2. What ends up happening is that there are 3 weeks of editorial shooting. Each person gets to shoot for an entire, by themselves, for an entire class. So again, let's say that Mac and I are just a team of 2. He'll shoot for 1 week, I will shoot for another week, and then the last week in between, we're just out because there's only 2 of us on that team. For a team of 3, they would actually shoot all 3. Now, if you're Xavier, you actually get to shoot whoever, because he's on, I think, a team of 2. We'll look at here because I've got the teams listed. Because he was sick and couldn't shoot his press release stuff, we're actually giving him a second week to actually shoot either more of his editorial content or a separate or different one. That's entirely up to him. But this is entirely up to you. This is your chance to shoot whatever the fuck pictures you want to shoot. So for here, if we look at this, so your objective is to create an editorial layout for a fashion magazine. Now this can be a print magazine, this is going to be an online magazine, but the magazine component in this matters because you need to do layouts for this stuff. So it's not like I just get together and get to make a group of pictures. That's not how this part works. So each photographer, this meaning you guys, is going to select a theme for your photo shoot. You're going to draft the reasoning for why you propose to do it and how it integrates for the magazine. So again, this is the kind of thing. Do not do a men's shooting and whip it out and say, yeah, we're going to run this in W. It doesn't belong in W. It belongs in, you need to figure that part out. Do not say, okay, I'm going to do some really cool bondage leatherware and it's going to be for Harper's Bazaar or L. It's not. It might be for ID, it might be for details, it might be for flaunt, it might be for nylon, but it isn't going to be for Harper's Bazaar. So you need to figure that out. It needs to fit wherever you're going to do. So going back to your original question, in most cases, the magazine would hire you and you would shoot pictures for that magazine. In your case right now, you can say to yourself, well, this is what I want to shoot. Who would publish it? And then pick the magazine. And so you're sort of doing it backwards, but that's okay. Again, you guys have suffered through this class for the entire semester, and you have this right now.
Do we have a list of magazines somewhere in our resources?
No. I mean, if you're going to get into what you do, send me an email. What I can do is I can send you a list of online magazines that would actually possibly really publish your stuff. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's who you want to do this work particularly for, but at least you could check that out. And then if you really were happy with the stuff that you did, and we can get permission from the agencies, if you're using, model talent, whatever, you can pitch it to the magazines. We've actually had people pitch and run them. So one of the, there's some pictures, well, I'll show you some examples of stuff and I'll tell you which ones that I know for sure were ultimately published. But at any rate, getting back to this part, because I need to get through all of this. So you need to draft the reason that you're doing this and propose how it integrates with the magazine. You're to produce 4 or 5 images following following your layout. So again, you are going to do layouts for this, because one of these needs to be a horizontal spread. Every photographer needs to shoot a horizontal spread. And this goes back to the conversation I was having when we were looking at all of that Stephen Meisel stuff and all the Salve Sudsbro stuff, whatever. They knew they were going into that. They knew what was going to be horizontals. They knew where the gutters of the images were actually going to go. And they actually did their image work, placed their work, composed their work to fit into that space. Guy Bourdin was really famous about this. Guy Bourdin said, the work that I do is for magazine only. It is never gonna, it's actually sad because he died relatively young, and it's really hard to find any of his work, to see any of his work anywhere, because he said, I don't ever want my stuff in museums. It's not meant for museums. It is meant for magazines. I don't want it on gallery walls. I don't want it sold. I don't want it anything. It is designed to be in a magazine. That's how you're designed. That's how I shot this, and that's how you're supposed to experience it, and I don't want it any other way. And his son has actually managed to do a couple of books of his, which is sort of magazine-like, but trying to find a print of his or that kind of stuff, because I've looked. And there's a few that are out there, but there's not much that's on the market, and whatever is on the market is just so expensive. But at any rate, you're going to create an estimate for the photography fees and expenses only. Again, this is editorial. You don't have any of the page concerns. You're not buying page space in a magazine. They're giving you these pages because it is them. You're creating content for them. Make sense? So we've had people come back and say, oh yeah, we did the SRDS for, an editorial shoot. And it's like, there is no SRDS for an editorial shoot. It's just, you're shooting for the magazine. They're paying you, and that's it. So the only thing that you're going to have in here is the cost to actually produce the images. So an estimate for it and a final invoice for it. The team itself, you still need to source wardrobe and accessories for your photo shoot. You need to schedule when you can all get together. Again, this is a team effort for everyone. So even though Mac and I are on the team together, and he says, well, I'm going to go out on my own and buy my shit, whatever, I would say, well, no, wait a minute. They told me I had to be with you to do that and actually sharing the cost, because the flip side comes back around. When I actually go shopping, I expect Mac to be with me and kicking in as well. So the team aspect of this is no different, even though only one photographer is shooting one set of images. Make sense? Because everybody needs to be invested in this. So at any rate, go ahead.
How does this now work? If you're shooting for the magazine now in the film, what are you putting on the model in terms of photo?
This is where the whole story part of it comes in. Exactly what I was showing you, that Stephen Meisel. So what do you want to do a piece on? So what a lot of people would say, especially right now, is the fashion show's just ended. What trends have come out of the fashion show? Do you guys get University of Fashion newsletter by any chance?
No.
Send me an email. I'll send it to you so you can get on the list. But they will talk about it. Comes out
What's it called?
every 2 weeks. It's not every week, but it's like every 2 weeks it'll come out. University of Fashion, and they do a pretty serious sort of like blog email. But then they're at the very end of it, they're trying to sell you stuff because it's actually they're trying to get you to sign up to take courses from the University of Fashion. But it's an interesting quick synopsis of what happened. So they'll do like all the shows, what happened this season, what's really hot. So you can do something based on that. You could do something based on a designer. You can do something based on whatever story part that you want to come up with. So again, this goes back to the music you're listening to right now. Does that inspire you to do a fashion story? The latest film that you've seen or latest TV show, does any of that inspire you to do? Succession is coming on for their last and final season. Is there some takeoff that you can use that to inspire a fashion shooting that you would actually want to do? You're really into Britney Spears or you're really into Taylor Swift. Is that, whatever. Does that sort of make sense? So you get to be the reason behind all of this. But again, that's where this whole draft the reasoning for what you're doing, you need to defend for what you chose to do. Well, I decided I was going to do a story on blue because that's really in right now. Or what's at the Met right now? No, there's a Comme des Garçons show somewhere. It's not at the Met though, I don't think. I think it's in Paris. I don't know where it is. But at any rate, there's things like that are serious, buzz. I mean, when Alexander McQueen was at the Met, the show was called Savage Beauty. That could be your jump off point if that's what you want to do. So anyway, does it answer your question?
It's just, should we take away the England logo if it's not to do with the storyline?
So again, you do not, there's liberty that we can take in this. You can say, oh yeah, I'm doing a Comme des Garçons piece for French Vogue. You can actually source the clothes from Zara. I'm not expecting you to source Comme des Garçons. Just like you did with Rick Owens. Okay. Anyway, you need to figure out your scheduling when you guys can all get together to actually pull this stuff together. This is the first project where if you have an outside stylist that you want to bring in to work on this, you can. So what does that mean? Well, it can be a professional stylist that basically helps you shop and return. That could be the stylist. Or if you've got connections with a fashion department here and want to know of somebody who's doing a particular line right now in the fashion department that really speaks to you, we've had people do both. So again, this is your chance. But you don't have to do that. You can still source this exactly the way we've been doing this up until now, and you'll be fine. For me, when the majority of stuff that I do, I work with my wife. We go out shopping, and and that's how we put together stuff. And there you go, buy and return. Yes.
If we do it with the stylist, if it was going towards the stylist's brand and they wanted to use it as their own brand, how would you talk to the agency about it?
So again, that's the conversation that you have, and the stylist needs to know that going into it, that the agency's in all likelihood not going to comp this. Again, if a stylist is using this for commercial reason, that's worth money. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the model's rate, $2,000 a day. It doesn't have to be that. But if a up-and-coming stylist wants to put this on their website, they can cough up the $500 for the model for posing for it all.
So it would be more like they pay for the shoot, how much they get paid during the shoot, rather than like royalties throughout it.
My feeling about this is that not only should the model be getting paid, but the photographer should be getting paid. If a stylist is actually going to use this, they should pay for it. This is business. This isn't getting together. The thing that you guys have to, at some point, lose sight of or lose right now. If you have the chance, let me put it this way. I'm not going to put this on you. I'm going to put this on me. This is how I was when I was in art school. If I had the chance to get together and make pictures, I would jump at anything. I did everything for free. Of course I'll do this, whatever, anything, just to do the pictures, to get the pictures. But at a certain stage of the game, that starts to go away, and then it becomes really about the money part of all of this. So all I can say is that if you shoot a set of pictures and you want to actually use it for commercial reason, which is what a stylist would be doing with this, or if you find an online magazine that wants to actually run this, again, they are making money off of doing this. And you, as creators of that content, are entitled to some of that money. It's just that simple. So, and the problem becomes in all of this, this is the one thing that I will say to you, is trying to do money after the fact is always more difficult than doing it ahead of time. The problem is that if you shoot these pictures and you love these pictures and the model knows this, then you say, oh, and I want to sell this and all that kind of stuff, whatever. Well, then the model says, yeah, these are great pictures and I know that photographer is really going to want to use this shit really badly, whatever. So that gives them a leverage point over you. And they can negotiate a higher rate. If they got a good agent, they should negotiate a higher rate because they know you love the work. That's very different than saying beforehand, before you even shoot the very first picture, hey, we're doing this on spec, and if we get a chance to do this, would you be willing to actually, what would you charge for me to be able to sell this to this magazine? Nothing has been shot yet. The pictures may turn out, they may suck. And then there's nothing that anybody wants to do with any of it, and so the money part doesn't matter. But after the fact, it's a completely different story. It's always easier to deal with money before you've made the pictures than it is afterwards, always. And this is going to be true for the rest of your careers.
So you're saying we should pay and list the shoot pictures and go,
What I would say is that if you really think that this is something you want to, if a stylist approaches you and says, yeah, this is my line, so a lot of designers here in the fashion department, they want to do this kind of stuff. But it's one thing to actually have pictures that they can use in their portfolio or put on a website. It's a very different thing if they are already in business, they've already got a storefront, even if it's an online storefront, and they want to use those pictures on their storefront, or they want to actually run ads in Chicago Social or Michigan Avenue, whatever, about their little boutique or their online whatever. That's commerce. That should be paid for. And it's easier to negotiate that all in the beginning. Does that sort of make sense? Okay, so after the close, to design and collect and construct the set for the shoot, to participate in styling the models and the props for this, to do the returns and accessories. Again, this is all boilerplate from the stuff you've done before. However, this is not. To research and draft the magazine profile, again, who's the competition, who's the readership, the demographics. You go through that demographic list that we gave you for your advertising stuff, comes into play again here. So again, it's all the same sort of stuff. Establish the issue that this is going to run in. This matters. So again, you are showing fall and spring. You are showing spring and fall. This does not happen in the seasons that it happens in. So this is the next part, to create layout sketches. Now, we've already talked about doing this for your advertising stuff. So I'm going to just, again, this is the perk of showing up on the Saturday before spring break when nobody else shows up, that I'm going to give you the secret. Because I think next to none of you, maybe one or two of you, possibly had layouts on your shoot for your advertising stuff, just hand-drawn little layouts. Okay, this is how we want the person to be positioned, because this is where we're going to put our type and all that kind of stuff. It was a requirement on the last spreadsheet, or on the last project worksheet. If you didn't have it, I didn't pay attention to that, so that isn't going to be an issue. But if you don't have it now, what you need to do is, once you've gotten all of your prints done for your presentation, take a blank piece of paper, lay it over your image, put a light table behind it, or put it up against the screen with a strong window with a strong light showing through it, and do an outline of the image that you're going to show us. And then your that will be your layout, and it will match your images perfectly. And we'll go, oh my God, that's incredible. You shot that picture exactly like your layout, but it will satisfy your layout requirement. My concern here is that you do not do that for this. So again, the easiest way to do layouts is to simply find something that is an image of a layout that you sort of like the vibe for. So this is going to be the picture that you want to do. Lay your piece of paper over this, trace your layout, and just have it hanging up on the wall so that you can refer back to this, because you're going to be saying in this. So think about this. When you start an editorial piece, does your piece start on the right page or the left page? Is it a spread or a single image? How does Vogue do it? They will do it the same for all of their layouts. How does Elle do it? They will do it for the same. L's may not match Vogue's. So you need to figure out how do they do it. What type do they use? Vogue has a Vogue, if you're going to do Vogue, their type is Didot, D-I-D-O-T. That's the type that they use throughout their, it's not all of their editorial content, but it's most of it, and it's certainly all of the title page, the title text, all of that kind of stuff, whatever, is always done in that. It's what they use on their cover. It's what they use for a lot of their editorial content. So it's just something to keep in mind, but that's all going to be expected. So don't be showing up with a layout that was done for Harper's and say, oh, I'm going to put this in ID. Their layouts are not even remotely related.
You said there was which pages are which type what sort of questions
Again, how did they do? Are their layouts full bleed, or are they doing separate little pictures with a lot of negative space on them? You know, all of those kind of things. Again, that's why deciding the magazine that you want to do this in, then my suggestion is to actually get the magazine and steal your layouts right out of the magazine, and then treat your type in the way, again, does their type only run down along the bottom, or does their type start in the very top? Remember we talked about how the top right-hand side of a page has actually got more power and more importance than the the top left-hand side than the lower right-hand side, because our eyes read in that sort of Z, follow that sort of Z path. All of those things play in editorial just as well. So you'll see, again, depending on the magazine that you're doing, they will treat their editorial content, they're in large part, they treat it all the same because, again, that's their brand. So you'll see somebody like Surface will treat their type completely different than Vogue. Well, Vogue and Harper's tends to overlap somewhat. But the thing you'll find in Harper's, and you can actually look up Fabien Barone and look at his layouts for Harper's, is that a lot of times you'll see in Harper's what they'll do is they actually do a spread instead of a single page. But what you'll end up finding is that the left-hand side of the page will be completely text, and it will be that text that's done, like text is image, like the sex version of the Madonna book that I showed you. They'll do a layout like that, and then there'll be an image next to it. So it really starts with an image, but the whole intro will, the sort of the title of the story and the intro, that vibe, whatever, will be on a separate page. They're not the only ones who do that. If you also,
So they do graphic design, like make up a whole.
yeah. So, I'm sorry, what?
Like if we were say doing mass export cover, we can like graphic design everything of this, like make pages that would cure the graphic design.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So the people that you should be looking at really quickly, again, it's interesting when I've got a smaller class, I feel like it can all be more freeform. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
What else the thing that you said about the magazine? You had it right here like this. You said something about this side.
Yeah, so again, not to rub this in, but
I missed it.
you missed it. But that's okay, we're gonna recover here.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, no, right? I'm showing you it's something different, but I do want to show you this part right here. That opened the wrong thing. So, for the people who do magazine layout that I would strongly suggest you guys looking at, there's 3 of them. So Alexei Brodovich, so he was Harper's Bazaar through all of the 40s and 50s. Alexander Lieberman, sort of his compatriot at Vogue, even longer. Both Russian, both of the very same generation, and actually both, I think, knew each other in Russia before they came to the U.S. I'm going to show you some of his work in just a second. And then Fabien Barone, again, of the sort of the modern people. Fabien, F-A-B-I-E-N, Barone, B-A-R-O-N.
Oh, F-A-I-E-N?
No, B-E.
B-E.
No, so, wait. Barone. Fabian, Fabien, Baron, Baron, like Baron. So anyway, Alexei Brodovich. So I want to show you some of him really quickly here, because again, this is something that you can really use in your ultimate presentation that will only add more weight to it, that'll only add more polish to it, that will only make it seem more important here. So it's not just the images that you're taking, but actually thinking about the layout that you're going to do this in as well. So I'm born in Russia, raised in Russia, started out in that whole Russian 1910, 1920s graphic design tradition. I mean, this was Russian graphic design in the first two decades of the 20th century, whatever, were just landmark. This is a perfect example of it. This, if this looks at all familiar to you, it is because of, again, what was going on in Russia in the 1920s. So, and again, this is all Fabian Baron. He comes to America. This is all still while he's in Russia, but you can sort of get this idea of who he is graphically. And again, I think all of this is on our website. If not, just send me something. This is how people actually lay out magazines, and this is how you should be laying out your portfolios as well as your any editorial content. But if you imagine a magazine being 200 pages long, this gets to be, they'll start out doing this with more images that are like playing card size on a board. And then once they start to narrow it down, the pacing and the scale and all that kind of stuff, then they'll go to these bigger prints. And they lay this out like this, exactly like this. I can't tell you the number of meetings I've sat in on this. So again, this is him. He is now actually at Bazaar, actually doing layouts. This is one of his first covers for Bazaar. Again, radical shift. If you think about Bazaar, and most of the fashion magazines when they were coming into this at this period of time, so this is going to be 1940, but in the war years and just before that, so the 30s and going into the 40s, whatever, a lot of it was that Hoyningen-Huhn, a lot of it was that Horst, again, really stylized, movie stars with Grecian urns and flowing dresses that look like togas. That's in really contrasty black and white lighting. That's the way I think of what was going on then. This was a completely shift in all of that. This became incredibly modern. It was a complete break of that whole Hollywood glamour lighting style. So look at this stuff. Don't you wish magazines would be doing this shit today? Just send you the stuff on Brodovich and Lieberman. Exactly, and the influences are, but this is actually at the time when Deco was actually, Deco really came in the 30s, so this is the 40s, so it's clearly, still feeling its way into here, but you also have the surrealists that are in here. All of this is being impacted this, but look at this. The whole pattern of the background matching the pattern on this. People have done this digitally later on, but this is just inspired. I look at this stuff and it's just like, come on. Why doesn't Vogue do that? Why doesn't Bazaar do something like this in this day and age? Don't ask me, but this is where he really excels. So this is a case where you've actually taken type that is on a page, but you've also got image elements that are on a page that actually become visual elements. So the text in here, it's important it exists as text, but the text in here is almost more important as a visual element. I can't read this. You can't read this, but look at the balance between the text that's on this side and what's going on here, and how all of this balances against... I don't know what happened. Yeah, really. Anyway, going on from this, he's one of the first people who really starts embracing doing silhouettes in here. This has all been cut out, and doing silhouettes in here and really celebrating the negative space that exists in this. This is all done after the fact. This is not done, this is not photographers. This is all graphic. The triplets right here, this is, again, who is Steven Meisel channeling when he did that Lanvin ad that actually had the 3 girls in a row, and then on the page next to it, the one girl actually looking back, the thing that I just showed you guys earlier. This is all a knockoff of, again, what was happening in here that Brodovich was actually doing. I told you about the Stephen Meisel buying everything that that Avedon had done in Harper's Bazaar, that story. 20 grand worth of magazines. Anyway, look at this, and this is a perfect example of Brodovich, what he did. Look at how he's treated the text in all of this to sort of like curve it around. This became classic Harper's Bazaar layout. So what I was talking to you guys about earlier would be a complete flip of this. It would have been the text as graphic element on this side, and this would be where you would have the opening spread, the introduction to the title of the piece, all that, and then image on the other side. But if you take a look at Vogue, Vogue doesn't do that. Vogue will actually take single image, always starting on the right-hand side of the page. Do you know that right-hand and left-hand sides of pages are priced differently in a lot of magazines? When you open up a magazine, the first page you see is the right-hand magazine because you're actually turning the left-hand page. So if I'm going through the magazine like this, I see this page before this is even in my purview, and as I continue to open it, this has got, in some magazines they charge a 15% premium to put your ad or your image on this side of the magazine. So that's why most people would start their titles and the introduction to their cover, the introduction to the story, the first image of the story, whatever will happen on the right-hand page. But Harper's will change that or flip that if they want to. So again, the magazine that you actually do this in, you need to go in and look and see how they do it. But look at this.
So you want to incorporate some level of text to our editorial pieces?
Oh, you need to do copy for all of it.
Okay.
It's not some level. I need to believe it's actually there. Look at this. This is 1950.
That's so sick.
I know.
That's pretty cool.
You know, is this Baroque period of? Hold on.
That's like how
No.
things are made today. That's
No.
so weird.
But if you take a look at the work that Fabien Barone did in the 90s at Harper's Bazaar, he brought all of this back.
So what if you wanted to bring back another era and
I think it's perfect. And you could even use that as a part of your story.
what if you know how the user reference some pop culture or whatever it is that we bring in, what if it was another photographer?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Photographers, you can steal from anybody, including yourself. You can riff on your old self. I know, right? One of the best lines I ever heard, Stuart Copeland, who was the drummer for the Police, they asked him, what was your approach to he's an amazing drummer. I used to play drums. I don't anymore, but I used to. Anyway, so I have this thing for drummers. But they said, so what was your approach? Obviously you're this like virtuoso. How did, what was the game plan, whatever. And he said, I spent years developing my tech. I learned everything that I possibly could. I honed it to the best I possibly could. And then I've spent the entire rest of my career trying to play like I did the first day I picked up drumsticks.
Damn.
It's so you develop the technique, but you try to get back to the innocence of what it was like when you didn't know anything. Right? And I think that is fucking noble. I can relate to that. I can relate to that as just a person who produces. Anyway, I want to keep showing you this because we're almost done with this part. So, one of the first people that actually cropped figures off of the page, let stuff bleed. So again, the things to consider does Vogue only do full bleeds? Does all of that? Look at this.
That's pretty sexy.
Well, he's playing with scale. He's starting to put elements together here. This is all done. Nobody has the depth of field. The depth of field doesn't exist to do this. But this was before there was any Photoshop. So this is all being done this is all mechanical. So this is all being done after these images are shot. But look at this. And it's not only that they've just done this part right here, but all the sort of strings of the harp, they actually introduce moiré into this image so that it actually mirrors what's going on. This fabric is notorious for moiréing, but it echoes the strings that are happening. It's just nuts. But then look at this text. This is what I was talking about, that whole sort of thing. So if you go back and you remember that whole sex thing that I showed you, whatever, again, it was the whole idea of a page of text actually being a physical, visual, graphic element, not just what it's saying in here. Because this is actually talking about whatever the shit this is all about. Look at this. Elements, just graphic elements that have nothing to do with photography. When was the last time you saw this?
Who's the text artist?
I'm sorry?
Who's the artist who put the text
So this is Alexei Brodovich is doing this right here. This is who we're looking at. But then Fabian Barone picks this up and does it again in Harper's Bazaar, because this is Harper's Bazaar, 1958, Richard Avedon. Then Fabian Barone, look at Fabian Barone, 1993, and you'll see Stephen Meisel doing the same shit. Anyway, but the whole multiples right here, and the whole stacking part right here to create depth, all of this is all Brodovich. Look at this. I know. So at any rate, I will send you guys this. That was a very long way to get around where we're at still. We haven't even gotten through the first third of this, but we're doing okay. We're doing okay. We're going to finish this class on time. Okay, so back down to here to create the layout sketches. That was the rabbit hole we jumped down. You still need to do concept boards for this that are going to be on your photo shoot. And again, your concept boards are the same way as we've done before. You need to draft headlines and copy for your final layout. So this is, again, the fashion story. The title, what was it? The copy, what are the clothes? What are the price points? What are the way that a magazine would do it. So you'll find that in older versions of Vogue, they would actually, in the copy, they would say, oh, this is Yves Saint Laurent vest, blah, 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 in crinoline, blah, 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 and you can find this at Neiman Marcus for, $998. Now they they'll actually do, typically now in Vogue, they'll do the credit for the designer, but all of the content will actually be on a page in the very back of the magazine. So it'll say, see page number 289 for availability and pricing. And so that won't happen actually on the editorial content. So again, you need to take your cue from how the magazine that you're planning on running this does it, and you need to mimic that. Design and create the final presentation, both physical and digital. Manage the entire budget for this. It's really only photography and the production part of it. And these are the things that you're actually going to be required to show. So your finished layout, physical and digital, the magazine profile, the concept and reasoning for why you're proposing to do it for that magazine, your working layouts, including a horizontal spread, concept boards, 4 to 5 images, including the horizontal in presentation format with copy, written headlines and copy for the final layouts, photo estimate, photo invoice, digital version of the presentation, and then you will submit the work like you've done for all the other projects, and there you go. Are there questions about any of this?
Yeah, what's the realization?
I'm sorry, what's the what? Actually, there are people who do put this in magazines. It's a great way to show it.
Well, theoretically afterwards, but like for presenting to this, do you want us to print it out in like a 3-page like as if it was a section of the magazine like that, or like just prints out what the page is?
So again, that's your choice. So like we've done this before, we will look at your digital presentation to see all the other elements. The prints we will actually look at in the critique space on the wall, but they should look like magazine layouts. They should be spreads that look like magazine layouts that go across, like you've actually just torn this stuff out. Now what some people will do is they'll actually do a second set of these and they'll actually glue them into a magazine, and that is how they present the work. It's another option. We good on this? Mm-hmm. All right.
Do we know who our partners are now?
Hang on. I want to show you some examples of this. Here, I'll show you. I think this is everybody in here. Yep.
Xavier! Okay.
Means you're going to be doing.
Yep.
Okay. Now, anyway, this is all on the website. Like I say, this is all. I'm going to re-put this into section 9. But if there's any question about this, just let me know. So here are some examples of stuff that's actually been run before. So this is, again, the whole concept board, the whole part, whatever. But this was the way this is what he ultimately ended up shooting. Yeah.
And this one published?
No. Let me show you a number of these really quick. So again, for Harper's, I'm blowing through this because you guys know what this is all about. Yeah, these are really beautiful. This is a real Harper's though.
Wait,
And uh-huh.
That's
That's okay.
us.
That's okay. Hang on. So, layouts. So just sort of keep this roughly in mind. And this is her images.
She's traced after she.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
that's what I suggested everyone do.
Like, she was like moving the first one.
That's what I've already suggested that you guys do. I tried to give you the. I'm just going to cut down to the final images. Well, I say that.
Do we have a number of
Oh, here.
Damn.
So again,
Damn.
layouts.
Sorry, it was funny.
This is the word.
Yeah.
That's a cool jacket.
Yeah.
Forced
Yeah.
to wear that jacket. I know, exactly. Who's this for?
I forget who she did this for, but what I love about this and things to pay attention in here, see the little page number that's right down here at the bottom? All of this shit matters. Layouts, all of this kind of stuff matters. I'll show you how to deal with text later. We're not going to do that today. But how you actually lay out this copy, how big it should be, how you justify it, all of that kind of stuff.
Really good put together magazine was.
What?
That was really.
Yeah, no, I know.
organized.
Again, there's some pretty well done stuff in here. So this is for Dazed.
Fuck you, didn't hire me.
Oh no! After that video.
Yeah.
But again, this is how Days would actually consider doing their layout part. This is very different than the whole vibe that you got with Vogue, and it's all about, you know, what sort of font that they were using, how they approached their layout,
That's
all
the
of that
students'
kind of
work?
stuff. Yep.
That's not. Ooh. Madeline Bailey. Good for them. Wait, where was the text and all that? Though?
Sometimes you have editorial that has no text. It all depends on the magazine. So I forget. So who's this for? Oh, Wonderland. Ever heard of that?
Nope.
Well, this is the Wonderland magazine.
That's all.
So again, she was looking for a magazine that would actually run this, not Vogue. I thought this was really well
That's
done.
sick.
It's a great spread.
That's sick. Oh, shut up.
I know, right? Yeah, so the trick if you want to do wallpaper, nobody uses wallpaper. Everybody uses fabric. So if you want to do this look, we've got the flats that exist here. You need to simply go to Vogue Fabric or Fishman's or any of that. You want to find, again, fabric that you sort of like. Most of this, what you ultimately end up doing is fabric you get at 54 inches wide for however long you want. So those flats are 8 feet tall. So if you get 2 8-foot pieces, then sew them together and bind them, open them like a book, whatever. We just staple them to a flat wall and you've got wallpaper. But finding real wallpaper and hanging real wallpaper is a nightmare. You will find cheap fabric like this. I mean, this is like, $30 worth, $25 worth of fabric. And the fabric is endless. I mean, it's like thousands of different designs and colors and all that kind of stuff, whatever. You'll never find that kind of variety in wallpaper anymore. So that's how everyone does it.
Can you go through it again?
Let me see that. What's the last image? Yeah, this is all fabric.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And this is for Romeo?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It seems like that could be in Bazaar or in this other place.
No, that text would never.
Anyway. So this is Adam Meyer. He actually is working here in Chicago right now and doing reasonably well. There's a lot of the,
Tropicana guy?
I'm sorry?
Is that the Tropicana guy?
I don't know who that is.
You brought him in for retouching?
Oh, no. I brought who in for retouching? I don't think I've ever brought him in
Yeah, you
for
did.
retouching.
Well, or maybe he stopped by after the class and you let him.
Oh, no, different guy, but yeah, that's no, completely different guy. Anyway, but Adam is actually doing a lot of work now because what you'll end up finding now is that there's Harper's Bazaar Greece or Harper's Bazaar Colombia. So there's a lot of magazines that do very specific, they're for other countries, and they're always looking for content. And so he does a lot. You'll see a lot of his stuff in again, Harper's Bazaar Greece, that kind of stuff. So if we go through and take a look at this, again, these are his layouts, but this is his editorial. Sorry.
I hate that font, but I like the font. Yeah, I know.
Say what?
Oh, the font is just terrible,
Yeah.
but those pictures are good.
All right, let me see if there's anybody else. Oh, this is an interesting one, I thought. Again, this was for nylon, and it was, again, looking at the pictures, they look like they were for nylon. So this is his work. And again, he decides he wants to do a cover shot of this as well. Why not?
That's fire. What?
So all of these are patterns projected.
Yeah.
You really can tell here.
Yeah, I know, but like it's done so well. It is not corny.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. No, it becomes a real challenge. And we actually did this in the old studio space in one of the classrooms, and it had white walls, which is even worse. So if somebody was going to do this again, this is the perfect room to do it in because this is a really strong projector and the walls are black. Because any scattered light tended to wash this stuff out. Yeah.
The negative spaces is the best part.
So, yeah. So this was a really interesting one. So this was done for Interview Magazine. And if you read the text here, it was this. So there were two students in this class. This has got to be at least 10 years ago, if not longer ago, when they actually did this. And the girl who was in here, she was a fashion design student. The girl you're going to see, she actually models this stuff. So it was a photographer. They were both in the class together. One was a fashion designer, the other was a photographer. That's how this class used to run. And she, for just some reason, just ended up hating the people who were in the class. Not Christy and myself, but the people who were in the class. And so their story was just this big final goodbye. Fuck you. That's what the whole piece was about. And so this is their story.
These are their stories.
Yes, these are their stories.
Ooh. Why is that?
So read this. 4 years ago, Jennifer's another nobody living in the middle of fucking nowhere today steps out and bears it all to reveal her controversial new collection.
She's the model.
Yes.
And
And the no model. These are this and the designer.
so the designer was the one saying
Yeah.
Wow.
you should.
Oh, I remember this.
And then I showed you guys the film from that. Anyway, it was just again, it was
You loved that. You ate that up.
the thing is that what I loved about it was a solid story with a solid reason behind it, and I loved that part of it. And again, that would have been true regardless. But yeah,
Just messing with you.
that's okay. You know, I tell this to people. I shouldn't say this because this is being recorded as well. In the decades that I worked for Playboy, I have seen more naked women than a gym teacher in grade school or high school. I don't need really anymore.
Oh, that's not what I meant. I meant that they did the whole fuck you.
Oh, well, that too.
Oh, I.
Okay,
no,
okay.
to the-
Wait, all right, so we've gotten through this, we've gotten through this, we've gotten through this, we've gotten through this. The last thing that we've got to talk about here really quickly are, you said you wanted to talk about contracts. I will get to that part, not today, because we've only got about a half hour left in here. I want to talk really quickly about model releases because that becomes a really big issue in this, and that really plays into all of you, and so we need to have a conversation about that really quickly. So that's kind of where I'm going to go next. Again, if you take a look at this model release primer right here, if you open this up, this will be the more, so I'm going to go through a really quick version of in model releases, why we need them, all of this. This is a little bit more, we'll explain it in a little, use the same language that I'm using here, but give you a little bit more insight about why they matter, when you need one, when you don't need one, what kind you actually need, all of that kind of stuff. But I want to have that conversation right now. And again, I'm going to continue to record this so that the people who are watching this video will be able to hear it. But there aren't any visuals to really go along with this. So I'm just going to have this conversation with you guys, and we'll get through this and then we'll call it a day. I'm not going to beat this totally to death. But anyway. Oh, if we get time for it, yeah, I would really like to do the scrapbooking. So I'll get through this as quick as I can and we'll do. No, I would love to do that again. Having images, talking about images, but I think showing you guys some of the stuff that we looked at today is probably as important as looking at and talking about other images as well. It's sort of exposing you guys as much as I can. So anyway, so model releases. Basically, what do they do? And so the thing that you need to think about a model release, this is all in here somewhere. Oh, okay. So the thing that starts out, the basic premise behind a model release, and the thing that's the most important for you to keep in your mind the whole time when you're dealing with this is this. And it's really very simple. An individual, at least in this country, has a right to their identity. And what their identity is, it extends to an enormous number of things. It extends to your writings. It extends to your image, how people perceive you. You have the right to control that. And it's everybody. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be a model. You don't have to be, it's just everybody has that inherent right. If somebody wants to do something with your image, you need to get their permission to do it. So if I want to...
Wait, they need your permission?
I'm the photographer, Mac's the model. I want to do pictures of Mac, and I want to run them in a public space. I want to use them to show, and he's clearly identifiable. It's who he is, who they are. I need to get permission from Mac to do that. I cannot just throw those things up there. I need to get explicit permission for not only what I'm doing, for how all of the things. We're going to get into all of these reasonings behind. But the long and the short of it is that everyone is entitled to the image of you. Mm-hmm. And if I want to use your image in any way, I need to get your explicit permission to do that. Mm-hmm. That's what releases are all about. So it's not that I can't do really horrible things with Mac's image. I can, but I need to get Mac's permission to do that. Does that sort of make sense? So permission runs, or this right to that image runs, there's 5 categories that we really need to explore in all of this, that you need to sort of keep in mind about this. But before we get into that, I'm going to go one step further and say the other thing that you need to consider in all of this is that you should not think of this as just you as a photographer getting permission from a model to do what you want to do with their work, with their image. It goes beyond that. So I will just tell you this right now. For any of you who are thinking about trying to sell your editorial story to an online magazine, the first question they are going to ask you is, do you have model releases for this? Because if you don't have a model release, that means that the magazine that's going to run this does not have a model release. And the model, whoever that is, can sue both of you. They can sue you, but they can sue the magazine as well, because the magazine ran the stuff. So again, a magazine will not touch this without a model release. So even if you don't care about getting a release for yourself, if you want to plan on doing anything with this stuff, you need to get a release. Make sense? So this is why they are necessary. The thing at the end, ultimately at the end of the day, when we talk about this image, is that it falls under right to privacy. You as an individual have an inherent right to having you and your image of you, the way you are presented, whatever. You have a right to keep that private. You have a right to control all of that about yourself. There are a few exceptions, very few. If you are a very famous national public figure that represents some viable interest, newsworthy interest story to the public, that starts to be a gray area. But inherently, for everyone in this room and most of the people you're going to meet in your life, you have an inherent right to your privacy. So what does that ultimately end up being? Well, the first one is an invasion of privacy. That's the first thing that can happen. So this is the one that we usually think about with privacy. We think about Jennifer Aniston in her backyard, sunbathing naked. Some guy gets up on a building with a really long telephoto lens, shoots a bunch of pictures of her, whatever. Her privacy, she had the right to expect, being in her backyard, surrounded by some big old fence, whatever, she had the right to expect that to be a private moment for her. And the person who invaded that privacy was not entitled to do that, and was certainly not entitled to then profit with those images. Now, they could have approached Jennifer Aniston and said, will you give us a release to be able to use these pictures? And she could have done that. She could have said, yes, I explicitly am going to give up that right to privacy, and I will do it via a model release. And that's how model releases work. But if she doesn't do that, that photographer has no right to do pretty much anything with those images. That's a real obvious one. I'm sorry, what? Oh, well, everybody figures that, again, you need to then wait. Okay, so not to get too far ahead of this, but so let's say that I'm the photographer. I've shot all these nudes of Jennifer Aniston in her backyard, and I sell them to the Inquirer, and they go up on the Inquirer, and they publish them, right? Then she's going to sue me. Well, the max she can really get out of me is going to be whatever the Inquirer paid me. So the Inquirer paid me $500 to do it. Jennifer Aniston's really going to go into court, make a bigger deal about this than there's already been made, and hopefully get $500 out of this. Now, it can go beyond that. So, for instance, if you take there was a woman who's she does color for NFL football, and she was, I cannot remember her name. Anyway, she was in a hotel room, naked, like, curling her hair and doing makeup and all that kind of stuff, and some guy put a camera right against the peephole of her hotel room and actually got footage of her, and she took him to court. She sued him in court, and she won like a $30 million lawsuit against him, which he'll never be able to pay, but nonetheless, it was Aaron. This is so funny. I'm going to do some like Aaron. What's her name? Aaron.
Yeah, on the Wi-Fi.
No, I'm going to do a search here, and I'm going to do Aaron peephole nude. right? And you know that Columbia College is tracking my account, right, for this, but Aaron Andrews, $55 million over these nude peephole photographs. And let's see if Google is. So at any rate, so this is a case where, that can go horribly wrong, but I'm just sort of like throwing that part out here. So again, I got 20 minutes to get through the rest of this. So I'm good. But again, she had the right to expect her privacy. She was entitled to that by law. This person violated it, profited by it. In the case of her, she actually sued him in civil court for damages to her reputation. And that was a very different thing than strictly profiting by this and her going after the money that he made. Although I don't think he sold it to anybody. I don't know what happened. But at any rate, nonetheless, that's the first part about this. So again, the whole hidden camera, that's a part that a lot of people would actually say, well, that's very obvious. It's the most obvious, blatant of it. The second of this is publication of private facts. Now, private facts are not facts that are untrue, but do you do an image that actually reveals something private about you? And when we talk about things that every individual is protected in terms of things about themselves that they are entitled, we are talking about sexual affairs, sexual orientation, private deaths, criminal records, diseases, psychological problems. All of that falls under things that that may be true about a person, but they have every right to expect to be kept private. And if those are supposed to be made public, then in that case, you need a model release to actually get that. So, how could a picture show something private about a person? Well, I've got a picture of Mac having sex with a dog. Now, Mac is nobody who really...
Let's say allegedly.
Allegedly. Mac is not really necessarily a newsworthy person, at least in the bigger scope of things. So Mac has every right to expect that that picture, that I cannot use that picture unless Mac expressly gives me a model release saying, yes, you can use these pictures. So, but again, this part matters. The part matters about the release, because the release is your waiving of those rights, of that expectation that you're keeping this private. It is waiving that. That's what a model release is all about. That's what it's used for. So it's important that you guys keep that part in mind as well. What is the reasoning behind a model release? And it is to waive those expectations of privacy. So, the flip side of this is, let's say I have a picture of Donald Trump having sex with Stormy Daniels, which is seriously newsworthy right now. He has in that case, I do not need a release from Donald Trump or Stormy Daniels. They are both considered newsworthy, and that newsworthiness in this country trumps the right to feel like you can keep your sexual orientation or your sexual affairs private. That newsworthy element, news in this country is considered like it's like, and that's why we have the Second Amendment and free speech and all that kind of stuff, whatever. The news has always been considered to be as important as government itself in terms of having this democracy work the way this democracy does. And so there are all sorts of protections that are brought in, all sorts of rights that are given to what is considered to be newsworthy that trump individual civil liberties and individual freedoms, individual rights. And this is one of them. So again, the same thing. Let's say it's Mac having sex with Stormy Daniels. Let's not do the dog. But in the exact same case, one of these would be protected, the other would not be protected. I always do this picture of Donald Trump in an alley having sex with a 13-year-old boy. If I shoot that picture and I run it, I need to block out who the 13-year-old boy is, because the 13-year-old boy is not newsworthy. The 13-year-old boy has the expectation for all sorts of privacy rights. So but if it's Donald Trump, who's a newsworthy figure having sex with a 13-year-old, that is a newsworthy item, and that trumps his expectation of privacy.
So it's newsworthy figure as in like someone who's a celebrity.
The thing is that if I had a picture of Donald Trump having sex with a 13-year-old and it was legitimate, don't you think that would have a huge impact on our current politics?
Okay, so it has
He's
to be
he's talking about running for president.
what if it
He's
was-
an ex-president. Blah blah blah.
What if it was like Kanye West?
Again, then you need to balance this against the newsworthy value of it. But that's a pretty loose term, and I would say that again, somebody that famous, given his notoriety right now, his whatever, would be considered newsworthy.
Yeah.
Well, again, it would be him breaking the law because it would be sex with a minor, so that would probably be considered newsworthy.
Yeah.
So anyway, does this make sense? So that's the second version of privacy that we have to have, that needs to be, again, that is inherently protected, that a release will then give you the right to use that if you can get that release. Make sense? Mm-hmm. The next one is false light. So now I've got a picture that's actually a lie. It's not a true fact about somebody, it's a lie. So this actually happened when I was working at Playboy. There was a modeling agency here that somehow Screw Magazine got a hold of a bunch of their model comps, and their composite, so pictures that they had that you used to get in the modeling days. Instead of just seeing things online, pictures of them, they would send you a card that was a card that had just a number of their pictures on it. And anyway, Screw Magazine had gotten a hold of a bunch of the ones from a modeling agency here in Chicago, and had this huge headline: "Hey boys, how about beating off to some prime meat?" And it was all these model pictures that were on there. And again, it went beyond that. It was something like they inferred that they implied that they were prostitutes, and they were not. They were models. But the implication of them being prostitutes was presenting them in false light. So it wasn't that they couldn't run the picture, it's actually the context that they put the picture in. And they implied that they were hookers, and that, again, was a false claim against what they really were and what they really did. And that expressly was protected. So you can't go in and lie about this. So I can't take a picture of my wife and put it into some magazine and say, oh yeah, hooker for hire, or wife or husband murderer, or you can't make up shit about people and do that. It's actually protected. So again, a model release would release that. So if the models who appeared in that Screw article had said, oh, sure, fine, you're welcome to run that picture of us, blah, 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 here's the release for it, then there would be no cause against them. Does that make sense?
Even if they didn't have a story before they were
We're going to get to that when we get to the release. Hold that thought. So the next one is commercial appropriation. And this, again, it's what you are actually doing right now, or the thing that actually becomes an issue in here is that I've taken your picture and I'm going to, this is the one that matters to us the most, is that I'm going to sell it. I'm going to make money from your likeness. Well, everybody is entitled to their likeness that is protected, and part of that likeness is that, can I profit from your likeness? And the answer to that is no, I cannot profit from your likeness unless you give me permission to do that. That's the thing that hangs us in all of these issues where you're going to shoot pictures, you want them to, you want to be able to sell them to an online magazine, or just place them in an online magazine. Maybe that placement is for free and there is no commercial part about it. But if there is a money transaction, then again, the stylist who wants to use this to advertise their own clothes on their website or in their advertising and that kind of stuff, that is a commercial use for that. People are profiting off of somebody's image, and that person is then entitled to part of that profit. The point being is that you need to get a release from them that explicitly says, yes, you can use my image for this amount of money. Make sense? Okay. So that's the long and the short of it. If we take a quick look at a model release, and we're going to finish this right here. We've got 9 minutes, and we'll be able to get through this in 9 minutes. If I go back to our session, again, this is all mixed up, but I've just got to pull it all together so it's all in one place. I'm going to take a look in session 8. And there's nothing in it, so that's not it. It's got to be 9. right here. So this is your moneymaker right here, guys. This was actually drafted from a number of releases and a really solid lawyer. So you should know that this release is actually written from the perspective of, this is written for photographers. What I'm going to say to you right here is that if you can get a model to sign this release without anything in here, you can do anything in the world you want to do with these pictures. It does not matter. So in here, in the very beginning top part here, just to give you some idea of what's going on in here, is that the top part here just establishes who's who in all of this. So again, it's the model's name would go here, and that they are willing to sign off of all of these other issues that exist in here. So model's name at the top, this would be you. Underneath it, they're giving the release to you to actually do this stuff. So this first section up here, the part that actually in the release, what the model is giving you, this is so detailed. The model starts off right off the bat, they're giving you permission to actually shoot pictures of them. That's the first thing that actually needs to be established. Then you get the right to use this stuff. As we come down in here, the release also gives copyright to the photographer explicitly. It also allows the commercial use, that means money. So we're again ticking off all of the boxes of the rights that the model actually has to that inherent privacy. They are giving all of this up right here. So as we continue to go down in all of this, the second part down in here permits printed material in connection, meaning it's not just that you shot the pictures or did anything with them other than putting them on your website. You've actually printed this out. The section C in here goes even further to protect the photographer. If the model doesn't like the pictures, it doesn't matter. They have no say in what can and can't be used. They don't have any say in how you actually portrayed them in all of this. So if you dress them up to make them look like some old hag and they're not happy with that, they don't get to say anything about this. Then you also are getting released from the advertising copy. Again, we talked about that copy, anything that was misleading. So you can say, hey, yeah, hooker for hire, college student at Columbia, serious sex trade. You can put any copy in here at all. That part, they're also releasing you from holding on to that. In paragraph D, this is actually the digital manipulation of images. So you can alter them. You can do all sorts of things. You can take somebody's head and put it on another body. All of that is being released right here. All of this stuff is finally, it's like saying you can do any of that. Finally in here, you're actually getting protection for anybody that you ultimately give these pictures to or sell them to. So you are protecting the magazine that you sell this to, because the magazine can turn around and put salacious copy on it, or because the magazine goes in and makes the girl 30 pounds heavier or 30 pounds lighter, or gives her a different head or a different skin color or a different hair color or a different whatever, that you have released everything. And then finally is this part down here where it just says, yep, I'm confirming this and I am signing this and dating this, and that is the agreement. So again, if you can get somebody to sign this, you can do anything in the world with their images. Now, in most cases, what I will say and just suggest that you strongly do in here is that this is the first stab effort at this. There is nothing that stops you from sitting down with a model and going in and crossing parts of this out, amending part of this. The model could say, I'm happy with you selling these pictures, I'm happy, but I don't want you to digitally manipulate any of this. If you are going to take the manipulation clause out of it, it's fine. All you do is draw through it with a pen and both of you initialize it, and that's all that you need to do to amend this contract. So the way that I typically start, again, these things are, like I was saying with the money, these are much easier to get before you do the shooting than after the shooting. Once the shooting is done, the model has got you by the short hairs. If you really love this work, they have got something that they can hold over you because you've already done the work. If you get this signed before the work is actually done, then there's nothing that exists. There's no foul, no harm. Going into this, well, I either can't use the pictures, so there's no reason for me to take them, or I can only use them for my own personal self. And if I'm up for that, then fine, you can go ahead and do it that way without a release.
So do you ultimately get models to sign for?
Hold that thought just a second, because we're going. There's another kind of model release I want you to look at here really quickly first. But so anyway, I've given you this release. This is the take all away from this. And again, the best thing that you can do, and this is the way I always start the conversation, and just something for you guys to remember. I look at a model and say, I'm so excited about doing these pictures. I can't wait to do this thing. I think we're going to make really, I'm so excited about doing this. Look at these clothes. Look at this whole set of weather. But you need to know, I can't do anything with these pictures unless we get together and make an agreement that I can do, that, I really want to give this, I really want to see if I can get this work placed in an online magazine, but I can't do that if I don't have a release from you telling me that I can actually do that. So we need to have this conversation. Will you sit down? Will you please sign this release? Because that opens up all sorts of possibilities that I can do with this. And you sell it. You make this something that they want to do. And you just say to them, I want you to just be aware of all of this. I'm not going to I'm not going to retouch your clothes off and actually sell you as nudes. I'm not going to do that kind of stuff. Whatever. I mean, however you have that conversation. Make sense? Again, it's a lot easier to do this before the hand than it is to do it after. Yeah.
You ever said anything like this to an agency or just with the model? Just said it to the model?
So we're going to get to the agency part right now. So again, in most cases, an agent would actually look at this and insist that the model actually send this to the agency before the model ever touches that. But that's between the model and the agency. That is not your job. It's not between you and the agency. It's between the model and the agency. However, you need to be aware that the model might say, well, I'm going to send this to my agent. And you need to say, well, of course. And then there you go. My agent personally looked at this. Not my last agent, but the one before it, used to be a model agent. And she took one look at this and she goes, oh, yeah, amend this. She goes, I would cross starting here at A and all the way down to dated. I would cross it all out and initial it because I wouldn't let a model do any of this. So anyway, just so that she was a very smart agent though. So.
At what point in the process do you do it? If the model gets on set, you have everything set up and you don't want to sign it.
That's why you get this worked out ahead of time, but this is why I'm also going to show you this other release. So this other release, this test shoot release, is something that we have actually worked out with the agencies here in Chicago. And what this is a very restricted version of exactly what you would need to sort of pursue this any further. So again, date, the model, the photographer. So basically any images or videos, behind the scenes, whatever, created on the date, whatever, may be solely used for the following. Non-commercial promotion for the photographer and the model's professional, again, websites and portfolios, period. No social media, no nothing. This is the agreement that we've already got with them. And again, without limiting the general foregoing, photography expressly is prohibited from using the test material on Facebook. This is the whole social media part of it. Any usage of the test materials not specifically set forth in the test release is prohibited and must be negotiated separately with the model's agent pursuant to a written agreement. This is how you can then, after the fact, get together with Christy and say, I've got this magazine online that's really interested in using these pictures. Will you approach the agency and see if that's possible to do? And again, if there's money involved, that's the first question they're going to ask you. But they're also going to want to know what the magazine is. If they don't know the magazine, they're going to want to see it. Because again, agents are really about branding their talent. They're about branding their models. And so if you're selling something to Bondage Unlimited and the girl that you've actually shot is their Molly McButter gonna be, they're not gonna want the Molly McButter gonna be Midtown, Midwestern farm girl, cute pigtails. They're not gonna want that in Bondage Unlimited. So they're gonna say, that's really not how we're trying to market this girl. So we're gonna say no to that. On the other hand, if you've got her into, I don't know, Yoga Unlimited or yoga, whatever, and it's pretty pictures of flowers and pastoral settings and, whatever. Oh, that's exactly who our model is. Yes, we want you. Yes, please get her in that. So that's kind of how this all shakes out. Make sense? The last thing that we haven't talked about in here, and it comes up into this part, it's actually in the, I will say, the minute you get into anything that deals with anything, nude, semi-nude, slightly transparent, any of that kind of stuff, all the focus and importance on all of this is just amplified 1,000-fold. And so again, if you are going to be shooting nudes and that kind of stuff, you need to go back to the original contract. So because the original contract doesn't explicitly set apart nudes per se, but if you're going to go down that road, this thing really matters, because the one thing that courts are probably liable to actually really go after is if you've actually somehow misrepresented someone, especially in this country. Nudity is sort of like this third rail in this country. Whether that's justified or not, it is. And so if I was going to shoot somebody and it was actually going to be more like Playboy shooting, that kind of stuff, whatever here, I would actually somewhere in here add specifically that this covers nudity, and then be, again, poor choice of words here, explicit about the nudity that it's really going to cover. What will you show? What will you not show? You know, blah, 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 so that there's a full understanding of all of this. The other thing that I would suggest really strongly, and it was just for us when I was doing, because I used to do searches for Playboy, so I would go all over the country trying to find people. You get the release signed. You actually want to also have a picture of the model holding her ID with her age visible on it, and make sure that it shows that they are over 18 years old and that they can actually sign this thing. You don't need a witness for any of them, actually. It's nice to have one, but it's not required. So this exists here, but it's not mandatory.
This one is less realistic for the outside world because it's more so for this class. And if you do any other person, you probably want to make sure that the shoot is good safety for shooting.
The thing is, though, a lot of people will actually sign these. You'd be shocked at how people will just say, oh, of course, and then they'll just flat out sign it. They won't look at any of this.
Jesus
I
Christ.
think that massively screwed over if they just happen not to before the shoot.
If they happen to be,
Happen not to sign it before the shoot.
again, if you don't have a release before the shoot and you actually do the shoot, they inherently have leverage over you, because now you have something that they can control. They can say, no, you can do this with these pictures, or no, you can't. That doesn't exist before the shoot, but it does after. That's why I really strongly suggest you work all this out before, because they don't have any leverage over you. You haven't shot any pictures. You haven't invested anything. And if they say, no, I simply won't sign this, then not in our test shooting situation here, it's a little more loose. But when you get into really advertising, so I used to shoot everything for Jockey. Jockey was a huge client of mine. And they insisted on a photographer buyout, which is really rare. Well, not rare that they asked for it, but that they would get it, but they paid for it. But they insisted on the very same thing for models. This was a release that they would have insisted on for Jockey. And with them, they would, again, before the first picture was done, the model would walk in before they even got into hair and makeup. They would roll this thing out and say, you need to sign this now. And if you need to get this to your agent, usually they were really smart about this. They would have already sent this to an agent. This was no surprise for anybody. But if they didn't sign it, the shooting did not happen. Now, that never happened to me. I can't imagine somebody getting that far along, again, because they were really explicit about it. But they wanted control of everything. Everything. So this would have been very typical of a receipt, or of a release that a Jockey would have insisted on. Questions about any of this? Are we good? All right. You guys have a good spring break. I will see you after
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Liam, I think that's yours. I think, or is yours?
Wait, you said 2 weeks.
Well, the next Saturday.
Next Saturday.
Oh, yeah. Technically, it's 2 weeks.
I was thinking that